Hey everybody, my name is Sarah Smith. I am the founder of the Atlanta Digital World Summit, but I have to tell you, it takes a team effort. 40 people on a host committee and a lot of great friends working very, very hard. And thank you to Arnold Gold and Gregory, because they sponsor the summit. They also sponsor this podcast. And shout out to Matthew Wilson, who we love. We are at Holland and Knight as a guest of H. West Richards, who is the executive director of the ATPC, American Transactional Processing Coalition. Good morning.
Good morning.
Did I get that right?
Almost.
Okay, fix what I screwed up.
The American Transaction Processors
Coalition. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
But close.
I was close, but I
close.
should know this. I've got all this information right in front of me. Processing. I've been saying processing. You are a very, very impressive person. And I wanted to just take a little bit of a walk down memory lane so people will know about the ATPC, but also about what an accomplished gentleman you are that is running this organization. And you can leave that $100 for me on the table when we're done. I was going through your bio, and you have an incredible career. You started out in Washington, D.C. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. It says that West public sector experience is very, very strong. Includes 7 years on Capitol Hill in the U.S. House of Representatives, serving in such capacities as legislative director, press secretary, and chief of staff. Okay, how old were you then?
Yeah, I actually interned when I was in school for, I did a Washington semester, I think, and that was in the last century. The 20th century that all happened, right? And
you went to the very, very lowly school of Carnegie Mellon.
Right,
right. So you're not very smart.
No. So I did a Washington semester. I interned and then went back to school, graduated. And then I went to work in the district office, which was in Youngstown, Ohio. And then moved to Washington when I was 23, something like that. And 23, 24, and then started out part-time as an office manager. And then I was a legislative correspondent. Then
what does that mean? What's a legislative correspondent?
Well, legislative correspondent is a fancy word for being in charge of the mail.
Okay.
Mail
is important.
Mail is important in congressional offices.
Especially pre-internet mail.
Yes.
So this is it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
You were young then, but obviously with what you did, you had a composure where people were like, give it to West. What is that?
I think I was just really good at pulling the wool over everybody's eyes.
I don't think so.
I took the role, all the roles I had on Capitol Hill very seriously. I knew it was a privilege to be there.
Yeah.
And I knew that not everybody had that kind of opportunity. So I think, all that sort of motivated me to sort of attempt to be wise beyond my years,
Yeah. I think you probably had to be.
Yeah. In each role, I can say that I recall feeling completely unprepared.
Okay.
And needing to sort of rise to the occasion. So even in the legislative correspondent role, legislative assistant role, which is when you get a portfolio of issues, then being in charge of all the legislative issues as legislative director. And then the role that I was completely unprepared for was the role of press secretary, because
why?
I had a member of Congress I was working for that was very much in the media all the time.
Okay.
So here I am, 26 years old, on the phone with the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC News, CBS 60 Minutes. So it was a trial by fire situation.
It's intimidating, I think. I think that's intimidating. And when you said rise to the occasion, I see in, sometimes with my kids who are in their 20s, I'm like, go try that. You could do that. Well, I don't know how. I don't know how to do that. I'm like, well, you're going to learn how to do it.
Right.
And you jumped in and you just learned how to do it.
Yeah.
The press secretary role is hard because you can't take stuff back when you say things,
Right.
But here's something else that I see in you is that you establish relationships. Did that help you as a 26-year-old press secretary?
Sure. I was pretty good at establishing a level of trust with reporters. So, and I think that was appreciated because my boss was so often in the media and a lot of media. Can
you tell us who it was?
Yeah. A lot of the media were competing for his time.
Sure.
So that gave me a little bit of leverage, to have the opportunity to build relationships because the reporters on the other side wanted to. So I was not working for a member of Congress that was seeking out media attention or trying really hard to get noticed.
People were coming to him.
They were coming out.
Got it.
So it was a completely different mode.
You were a gatekeeper, protecting his interests.
Sure.
But you also have to communicate really well with him.
Yeah. And he was very media savvy. His name was James Trafficant, representing Youngstown, Ohio. He was a very popular member of Congress in the 1980s, throughout the 90s. I worked for him for 7 years.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good run.
Yeah.
Especially when you're young. A lot of young people. I was like this. I was like, what's next? Mm-hmm. I did this. What's next?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that you had staying power is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd, and I'm very interested in transportation and infrastructure. It seems like you knew a lot about that, and you worked on this.
Yeah.
The House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Yeah.
What's a takeaway from that?
That was, at the time, it was called the Public Works Committee. And we served on the aviation subcommittee.
Ooh, that's airplanes, people.
Airplanes.
Yeah.
Right. So we were on the aviation subcommittee. That was our focus.
Okay.
And interesting story about that. And this is going back in time some, but in 1988, I was in Europe, and I was doing an internship in Switzerland. And then when I was done, I was kind of tooling around Europe, ended up in London, and was there for a little while. And it was time to come home.
Okay.
And it was getting around Christmas time, and I had been out, having fun, visiting different, institutions that would offer libations, let's say, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's say at pubs.
I was at pub hopping.
You were at the pubs.
I was pub hopping. Yeah.
That's a good place to go when you're in the UK.
They invented them. Yeah, that's right. They invented the idea. So I was getting ready to come back to the U.S. after a little while, and
a little pub hopping.
Yeah, and so I was thinking, my dad was born in Wales. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
So it occurred to me. I was like, maybe I should extend a day and just go find his house or whatever. And I decided, you know what? I'm too tired. I'm just going to go home.
Right.
Turns out that was a good decision. So the next day, I went to Heathrow, got on my flight.
Yeah.
And flew back home to New York and then back to Pittsburgh. The next day, when I got home, turned on the news, and Pan Am 103 had been bombed and crashed in Scotland.
Yep.
And 300 people plus
I remember it.
died.
Yeah. And there were a lot of students on that.
A lot of, Syracuse, a lot of from, near where you grew up.
Yep.
Buffalo. And anyway, it was shocking.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was Pan Am 103. That was I believe, the 21st of December. I was on Pan Am 103 the 20th of December.
West.
I was on Pan Am 103.
Wow.
Out of Heathrow.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, if you remember, I was thinking about extending my trip a day.
Yeah.
But I didn't because I had visited too many pubs, which ultimately probably saved me. Now, what's interesting is years later, my boss was in charge of that investigation on behalf of the aviation subcommittee in Congress. And I had this story, so it personalized the aviation subcommittee's interest in a lot of this. I was someone who...
It's fascinating.
I was, as fate would have it, I was someone that could have easily been on that flight.
Right.
But wasn't.
Yeah.
I was on the flight right before.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And it's very sad, but I'm so glad that you're here with us.
Yeah, it was just, it's just luck,
It is luck. Yeah.
Anyway, we worked on that investigation for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was interesting, but I had that.
You had a very personal connection.
Yeah.
You have a very personal connection. You have an incredible story. And that was really tragic.
Yeah.
Tragic crash. Yeah. Amazing. One of the reasons I tapped into the transportation and infrastructure piece is because I'm very interested in it. We live in Atlanta, Georgia, where we have the busiest airport in the world on one of the smallest pieces of land, but we still do it better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much on the highways. We have room to improve there, and we will. But it's very, very. It's very exciting to be here in this state. So here we go. We've talked about the Olympics a little bit because I have said that one of the reasons I started this ADWS program was because my boss worked for the Olympics and wrote part of the Olympic bid that said we want to put $78 million worth of fiber optics into the city and sell the IOC, International Olympic Committee, the city of the future.
Yeah.
And we're skipping over a little bit of stuff that he did because West has done a lot. And I really want you to go to the ATPC website and look at his bio. It's fascinating. But West was very involved in probably one of the most successful pieces of the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games, working with Georgia Tech.
Right.
And people loved it. People loved what was done at Georgia Tech.
Right.
And it was I remember it being one of the pieces of news and that people kept coming out and talking about, have you been to Georgia Tech? So tell us just a little bit about what you did there. So
when I was in school at Carnegie Mellon, I worked for the provost there in Pittsburgh. And then I went off to work on the Hill for 7 years, and he went off to become president of Georgia Tech. And he lured me down, basically early 1994, to be a special assistant helping him with all things Olympics.
Amazing.
Okay, so really public relations for Olympics, but I did some operational things for the president's office as well. And he was a visionary, and he was responsible for creating basically what was a virtual reality scenario that they were going around the world with.
Yeah.
Demonstrating what the venues would look like.
Right.
Because many of them had not even been built. Okay. Now, at the time, the number one competitor to us was Toronto. Toronto had all kinds of infrastructure and all kinds of things that had already been built that could accommodate the games. We had very little of that. We had to go build it.
I didn't know this.
And so in order for the people, voting on who was going to win the bid, right? They needed visuals. They were like, okay, well, you don't have a stadium, you don't have this venue, that venue, whatever. We can't picture it.
And you're selling it.
Yeah.
And
you're selling something that doesn't even exist. And you're going up against a competitor that has it all.
Right. The brick and mortar. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So he put all the best minds at Georgia Tech together to build a virtual reality, almost like a holographic scenario.
Georgia Tech.
And then they were able to deploy what the athletes would look like in these venues, and they did it by going into the Georgia Tech labs and like putting all these like weird nodes on everybody that they would put them in like what looked to be like wetsuits, okay? Mm-hmm. And they put all these nodes on them, electrodes, all this kind of stuff, and have them move around, all this motion analysis stuff. And all that technology was translated into this presentation. So you could see the athletes moving around in these venues that didn't even exist.
Okay, I have to stop you because James Cameron, who directed and produced Avatar, said that he did this first, but he didn't. Okay, so just everybody remember that.
Right.
Okay, it was Georgia Tech.
It was Georgia Tech.
This is so interesting.
Right.
Yes.
And so had that not happened, the multimedia presentations and it was all super cutting edge. And it was so impressive. I think it endeared us to the selection committee people.
I love this story.
Yeah. And it was, not a really well told story, but it really was something.
It's huge.
And that was like in 1990, 91, 92.
Virtual reality.
You didn't even have the internet yet.
No, I know. And you guys were doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm seeing a sea change now with you. But finish. Go finish. Yeah. I'm sorry. My brain jumping ahead.
Yeah. So so I think there were really three factors that helped us win the games. One, of course, was that.
Yeah.
The other was what you mentioned before. All the fiber optic investment. That resonated with the committee folks that were voting on the bids. And then Andrew Young went to Africa and got every African nation to vote for Atlanta.
Love.
Right?
We love
So
him.
you add all that up, that's how we beat Toronto. Otherwise, there was no way. There was no way you were going to compete with a city that was, at that time, 4 times our size.
Right.
Incredible infrastructure.
Yeah.
Great reputation. Canada, serious bid, serious people. And we were the underdog. And we beat them.
I love it. Were you happy when that
bid? Yeah.
People, I've heard, I think this was actually Roth Kehoe saying that when the bid for Atlanta was announced, that Atlanta had won. Everyone in the whole city had thrown their windows open and was yelling and cheering for the city, which is, I wasn't here then, but that's a great story. And that is Atlanta. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One last thing.
Please.
Those Olympic Games set the trajectory for Atlanta's ascension as a Tier 1 American city.
What is a Tier 1 city?
Well, there's lots of ways
Sure. I just in your opinion.
Population just in general.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And how do you grow population? You do great things and you bring companies to your city and you do all this economic development stuff.
Yeah.
That's really how it works. And then also you have to be a cultural center too.
Yep.
And I think all those elements began to get a lot of momentum after we won the games, getting all that sort of international attention. And so it triggered interest by a lot of major companies, all the fiber optic stuff that came out of the games. Our member firm, Incom, downtown, they're sitting on, that building was the Olympic building.
Right.
They're sitting on all those pipes and all that stuff, and they're the world's largest prepaid card company. So it impacted the industry that I work in now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you go back far enough,
we're sitting. If folks, you want to go to YouTube, we're going to try to capture some B-roll of our view here, but there's NCR, there's Microsoft across the street, and IKEA, my favorite. But Atlanta has changed so much, and I'm going to tell you right now that my husband and I moved here after it was announced that Atlanta was going to host 1996 Olympic Games. That was what made us move here.
Wow!
I said to my husband, "Guess what's going to happen to that city?" What? I make him say, he's got a PhD. He's very smart. What, dear? The games are going to make the city blow up. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity if we move and we try to take advantage of the changes and we see the city and become part of it. And we've moved in 1992 and never looked back, and I can't imagine living in any other city.
I think there's a report that came out from the Metro Atlanta Chamber 2-3 weeks ago about now how Atlanta is the 6th largest metro in the U.S.
Right. Let's give a shout out to the Metro Atlanta Chamber of Commerce. And I have a friend there, Grant Wayne Scott, who I love. Do you have a friend at the chamber that you dig?
Same guy.
Oh, same guy, Grant. He's our guy. We love him.
David Hartnett. I know.
David Hartnett's a good guy, too.
Yeah.
Really love Grant. And David, we love you, too. All right. You're working as a press person at Georgia Tech, and you're seeing technologies. And is this a catalyst for you to move into the technology sector as a professional person? Or was there something else? Or was this it? Was this the thing?
It was the thing for me because it was the thing that was driving my boss. Okay.
Yep. So
he was a technology, visionary. When he worked, and this we're talking about Pat Creasine, when he worked at Carnegie Mellon, he was up for the presidency there, and one of his requirements was that if he were to take that job, if he were to be elected and accept the job, they would have to agree, the board of directors would have to agree to create the world's first college of computing. Okay?
I didn't know that.
This would have been in the late 1980s.
Okay.
Now, there were plenty of schools plenty of schools of computing across the country.
Okay.
But not a college. There's a big difference between the two. At that time, 40 years ago, the computer science schools were, at the MITs and the Caltechs, they were funded at maybe $25 million a year, or $50 million a year.
Peanuts.
Right? A college, is funded at $150, $200 million a year. And this is going back, 35 years. Anyway, they said no. So Georgia Tech approached him, and he did the same thing. He was like, I want to build the world's first college of computing.
I love it.
And they said yes.
I love it.
So he came and built it. 2 years later, Carnegie Mellon had one, the second one.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I see it.
But he created the first.
Got it.
In the world. And now is recognized as one of the top 3 computer science colleges on the planet.
Georgia Institute of Technology.
Yeah.
Great school. Great school. And I love the fact that you emphasized the yes. Because I think that saying yes to things is really important for people to do. And I'll throw out a toss to Mr. Ryan Millsap, who taught me to say yes to different jobs and different challenges. And it's been a great, great, great thing in my life. Saying yes is huge.
Yeah.
There's huge power in that.
Yeah. But I wanted to weave back to your original question.
Oh, you're doing so good. Right? I don't have to do anything.
Yeah. So naturally, my focus became more and more technology related, right? Now, what's interesting about Pat is he was very close friends with Steve Jobs. And because at Carnegie Mellon, he was Apple's largest customer.
Wow.
So naturally, he had a good relationship with Steve. And after he went to Georgia Tech, he was invited to be on the board of directors at Next Corporation, which was Steve Jobs' company that he started that had kind of an education focus.
Yeah.
And then from there, he got, he had Pixar and everything else going on. So I got to actually spend time with Steve Jobs back then. So that was a neat opportunity.
Yeah. So, when you reflect on that, what do you think about?
I first met him when I was like 19, and he was like 32, so I thought he was old.
Yeah.
Couldn't relate to him. But no, he was, you could tell that in any given room, he was the smartest guy in the room.
Wow.
He had quite a bit of charisma. But I will tell you that Pat Creasine shaped a lot of his perspectives, especially around education and marketing and bringing the discipline of bringing the humanities, the liberal arts into the world of computing and connecting them. And at the end of the day, Steve Jobs was a genius marketer. And he understood that intersection between liberal arts and those types of skills, soft skills, were very important in the computer science world. That shaped everything he did. So, I think it made him more attuned to what the customer wanted and needed. And I think it did a lot. And so philosophically, I think he learned quite a bit from Pat.
That's fascinating. I'm so glad that our listeners are going to be able to get to hear this story, because there aren't a lot of people that can tell something like that with such breadth and depth. Check out Georgia Tech online, folks. Now you're working and moving into a tech sphere, more technology.
Right. Yeah.
Why did you like it? Because if it didn't capture your imagination, I mean, from here on out, you're, now you're a tech entrepreneur, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're starting your first this. I mean, you started several companies.
Yeah.
So what is it about the technology that you like?
Interestingly enough, my major in college was public policy, which is basically government, right? Which is kind of what I do today. But I had, effectively a minor in information systems. Okay? Which is an odd combination back in the olden days.
Right. You're using both sides of your brain.
Right. And your
whole brain.
I had to, learn how to, program computers, and, C++ and Pascal and all this stuff. And I absolutely hated it. That side of my brain does not work very well at all. But I adapted and saw the power of it and the type of impact technology could have, right? So I started out kind of like not liking technology. It wasn't my thing. I was really a full-on liberal arts kind of person.
Got it.
Okay? I did not like programming computers and running software.
No, it was drudgery.
It was drudgery.
I get it. I did it for my first job in the early 90s.
You did? Yeah.
I had a split screen showing the code, and
some people love it,
Learned how to code.
But hanging out with a mentor like Pat Creasine, my eyes were open to what could be, what the impacts on society could be. That was my thing, right? Mm-hmm. How technology could impact society in a good way. So when he left Georgia Tech, I went to work for him. He had created an online learning enterprise called Virtual University.
The first. Okay, again, here we are. There's so many firsts in your bio, and there's so many firsts.
Yeah. And
pioneer people. The word pioneer is in West's bio a few times.
So we started it.
Love it.
Too early.
Love it.
And we came on the scene during .com. And that was like sucking the oxygen out of all the rooms. So when we showed up trying to raise money, talking about education, it was like,
Yeah.
So our timing was bad, but the idea was good. And, it was amazing being there and, listening to someone who could completely see the future. I remember he would talk about, okay, this is what we're going to do, right? We're going to put college courses on CD-ROMs, and people are going to take classes. We're going to tape professors and put it on CD-ROMs and then plug it into your laptop, and then you're going to take a class. And and he lined up all these professors, and we went around the world raising money. And then he would talk about, okay, now it won't be long before the bandwidth will be there, and this will all be on the internet. And online learning would be a big, big deal. And, at first I was kind of skeptical. And I was like, okay, well, because back then, I remember we had like Apple laptops with dial-up. I'm like, we're not going to take a class on this. But he knew.
Right.
It was coming.
Yeah.
The revolution was coming. And I think we just got out too far in front of it.
He was 10 years ahead of his time.
10 years ahead of his time.
Yeah, easy. Yep.
Now, I would say the people that did the most with it, that really got it cranked up, would be the University of Phoenix.
Oh my God, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Okay.
They had the brick and mortar infrastructure, and when they went to investors, they weren't starting from scratch like us. So they were able to start getting this concept rolling. And then there were other entities, Northwestern University, Georgia Tech got on board. And then the university started doing online stuff, and it just kind of grew from there.
Okay.
But, you have to understand, back in 1996, 7, 8, 9, it was really kind of an out there kind of concept. I mean, people kind of didn't get it.
It was brand new.
Yeah.
And I do think that there were a lot of educators that actually pushed back and said, I'm not teaching on a computer.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, I teach in front of people. I have a classroom. And the reason I'm saying this is because in 2002 at Emory University at the Griswold Business School where I was working, they said, Sarah, go and find out how these online classes work. And I went to the University of Phoenix, and I went to Duke, and I went everywhere. And all I needed to do was call you.
Yeah. We had the playbook.
I know you did.
And we shared the playbook around. I think it got around. There were elements of what we put together that were eventually used. So we did have an impact. We were just too early.
The systems that are being used now they might, the cameras might be a little bit better, or this might be a little bit different, but it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff. Leave it to Georgia Tech to go and put some virtual reality or something into some of these classes and leave it to them. Let's watch and see what they do.
That'll happen.
I know it, and it'll come from Atlanta. Yeah. Because we're the best.
That's right.
Now, I want to jump to the American Transaction Processors Coalition.
Right.
And because you were one of the people that pushed to create this. So there was this financial culture growing in Atlanta.
Right.
Which created I'm going to let you just tell the story because I don't know what the story is. But somehow it led you to create this organization. So what was the climate like to give you that, where'd the idea come from?
Yeah, so 2009, 10, up through, 13, 14, I was running, I created a trade association.
Created a trade association, everybody.
Yeah. I created one.
This guy's lazy.
To serve the mortgage industry.
Oh, right, with the reverse mortgages.
Yeah. That's a long story on how that happened. But
it's genius.
Yeah.
I don't think we have time for that one.
Yeah, that one's, but I landed in that
look it
accidentally,
Amazing.
Guggenheim Partners in New York recruited me to address some challenges on Capitol Hill and build a unique team. And that's a very long, complicated story.
I think we'll have to do a part 2 podcast.
That's a good one.
If you're up for it, I would love to.
So it was financial services. In the part of the mortgage industry I was in was really the non-bank institutions that were operating in financial services.
Okay.
And that created a unique sort of regulatory climate that had to be dealt with.
Gotcha.
Okay. These non-bank entities were regulated, but not like to the degree that banks were.
Yeah.
And anyway, I mean, we built this mortgage coalition that is responsible for saving America's reverse mortgage industry, because after the financial crisis or during it and the aftermath.
And we're talking in the 2008,
9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
There were concerns about the government underwriting that industry. So we had to go and
I remember that.
Raise a lot of money to from Congress to save it. And we did.
Kudos to you, because money was scarce.
Yeah.
So good job.
And so when that journey came to an end, I enjoyed it so much I wanted to do it again. And I had some friends that were familiar with the payment processing industry here.
Okay.
And over the years, I would ask questions about it. I didn't really get it. I thought it was interesting. And then the more I learned about it, the more I realized that there was a similarity between the mortgage industry and the processing industry. And the nexus was really around non-bank financial institutions engaged in commerce that were being regulated in different ways and sort of struggling with that. You know, it wasn't cut and dry. This is going back 2013, 14. So I was curious, and the people that knew about the industry were a couple of friends of mine who were lawyers working in a law firm, and Robert Green and Roth Keogh, who are with Holland and Knight.
Love them.
Right. And I started asking about, how well represented was this industry here in Congress, and did people under the Gold Dome downtown in Atlanta even know what these people were doing? And we were like, yeah, we should. And they were open to researching it a little bit, using some of their resources. So I said, let me tell you what, there's something about this industry that's important, and it's interesting to me that nobody knows about it. And I'm pretty sure that the politicians in Georgia really don't understand it or really know about it. It was just a hunch.
Sure.
So, Robert and Roth were like, all right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go up to Capitol Hill in D.C., and you're going to talk to all the member offices that represent Georgia. Find out what they know. We are going to, this is Roth and Robert, they said that they were going to talk to the general counsels in a lot of these companies here that are processors and see what they were doing in terms of government relations as it applied to their engagement from a public affairs perspective, engaging with Congress and agencies in Washington. And then they would sort of look around downtown and get a feel for what the politicians knew about the industry here in Atlanta. And what we figured out was nobody knew much of anything. And then I had a friend of mine that was a former head of strategy at Deloitte, who was on contract with the World Bank, doing a lot of economic development stuff. I had him sort of research the market and transactionality, which is a term we invented. And we figured out that there was 35,000 people at least in this area working in payments.
Yeah.
And here it was having this gigantic economic impact job-wise here in Georgia. And it was an industry that was having economic impact across the globe. And it was a mysterious industry. What were these guys doing?
Right.
Well, they were moving ones and zeros around the world. They were operating the bloodstream of the consumer financial grid. And
my head is exploding.
Turned out to be the highest concentration of payment industry enterprises around processing on planet Earth. And then we realized, okay, this thing maybe merits a trade association that's representing it. So part of what I did is I went and I looked at the landscape in Washington at the trade associations representing the industry already. And what I came back with was a sort of a perspective that the existing trade associations, were very, very large, very broad, and the processors, were involved with them, but they didn't really have their own singular voice in DC. It was diluted by other entities in the payment space at that time.
Okay.
So we thought, well, here we are, processor central, no real voice in Washington. We're in a state that has a political climate landscape that doesn't understand the industry, isn't even aware of the industry.
But they're pro-business.
Pro-business.
They're pro-business.
So we thought, this industry is so consequential, has so much critical mass.
Yeah.
We could probably put together a trade association that would have a ready-made sort of voice in Washington via, the 16 members of Congress that are in Georgia, right? Just like in Michigan, right? Democrat, Republican.
Sure.
They're always looking after the automotive industry.
Sure.
You want to see bipartisanship? There you go.
I love it.
Okay. Texas, oil. California, movies. Tech, right? New York, financial services. So these are sort of ready-made congressional delegations that have an automatic interest in helping the industry, right? So we thought that was a good enough equation to present to the payments industry that you deserve your own voice.
Yeah.
And we can create quickly a group of influential people to represent, your interests on Capitol Hill, just to get started. And so we, in 2013, late 2013, August, we pitched it to a lot of C-level processors who were already members of other trade associations in DC. So we were coming at this with a unique perspective, right? So I assembled a team talking about, public relations, government relations, state, local, federal. I created this team to pitch the concept. But I had a ringer. And the ringer was Tom Price, who was representing the 6th District of Georgia, who at that time had the highest concentration of payment companies inside of Transaction Alley.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
He was chairman of the U.S. House Budget Committee at that time. He was on financial services. I had worked with him for a long time. So he was part of our pitch team. So here we had a member of Congress.
You had a rock star pitch team.
Yeah. Pitching why the industry should do this. And he closed out the pitch by saying basically, hey guys, I know a thing or two about how Washington works. I know a thing or two about Congress. I know a thing or two of what happens downtown under the Gold Dome, because he was a senator. He said, this is a big opportunity. And here's the deal, guys. You can get a much stronger voice in DC if you follow through with this concept and listen to what Wes is telling you and the team. Because the bottom line is, if you're in Washington and you don't have a seat at the table, you're going to be on the menu. And all the eyes got big. And that was it.
I love it.
We launched.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you. Citizen of the Year. No, I'm serious. You've got that entrepreneurial background and you've got this interest and you could see the future. Tell me about, give me two of ATPC's greatest achievements in the last 10 years. Because on Thursday in Atlanta, Georgia, you're celebrating the ATPC's 10th year.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, it's my birthday on Thursday. And my husband said, where do you want me to, where do you want to go out to dinner? And I said, we're going to the ATPC party for my birthday. He's like, what? I'm like, no, this is going to be fun. It's great. I'm happy. I'm excited. So that's I'm into this stuff.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
But please give me two things, because I know we could talk forever, but we just don't have that much time.
Yeah. I'll give you two things, but I'll give you a precursor. I think one big accomplishment the nomenclature will be letter A, right? Letter A is the fact that we headquartered here in Transaction Alley, where so much of the industry is located.
Yeah.
We are not headquartered in Washington, D.C. by design. We're near the customers. Now, do we have a presence in Washington, D.C.? Of course. I was there last week. I'm there all the time. We have access to great offices. It's all good. But we're headquartered here.
Great.
So we that's an important message. Letter B is we invented the term transactionality. So my chief operating officer invented it in early 2014. And he had a bit of a marketing background.
It's great.
Public affairs background. He didn't actually like the term.
Okay.
But we convinced him that it was a really good, nomenclature, right? So he went along with it, and then it kind of grew on him. But it was his idea. And now when you go to these fintech conferences around the world, our geography has its own tagline.
Grant Wainscott is going to Germany.
Yeah. And he's referencing transactionality, and the Germans know exactly what that means.
Yep.
They know exactly where it is, and they know exactly why it's important.
I love it.
So that was, so the letter A, letter B sort of background accomplishments that just kind of happened. But we've had a lot of accomplishments. I would say the two biggest ones, and it's hard to narrow it down to just two, right?
I know.
But I can tell you what, I'd say number one was the creation of the Georgia Fintech Academy.
Love. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So we pulled together the political horsepower to launch what has become the world's largest fintech academy. It's an academy that has a curriculum where you can be certified in fintech, and payments, of course, is very much part of that curriculum. It is being offered in all 26 universities across Georgia. They have produced coming up on, 5,000 fintech-ready workers. They're getting bigger and better all the time. Flattery is or not flattery, but the best kind of flattery, right, is when someone copies your idea. So next month we're going to Ireland, and part of what we're doing in Ireland is we're bringing the largest fintech academy in Europe together with the largest one in America, which is the one here in Atlanta.
Cool.
The one that exists in Europe happens to be in Belfast, Ireland, which is in the UK, and it was inspired by us.
I didn't know that.
And
I'm going with you.
You're going with us, yeah.
So excited.
They more or less asked for our playbook, and we gave them quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
And they said that they were going to do something with it, and they did.
Genius.
And now it is an extraordinarily successful academy. So we're gonna part of what we're gonna do, workforce development. We're gonna bring the two academies together.
Love it.
Okay. The best way to grow talent is to do it organically and start at the beginning with education, right? Now, one thing I did leave out is not only did we start a curriculum that was made available to college students, but we made versions of that curriculum available to all 525 high schools in Georgia. Huge. That is where you really start.
It is, and I didn't know that. It's so impressive. And I actually have a meeting with the head of the Fintech Academy in these offices in a few hours. So you might see me again today. Mm-hmm. Don't kick me out and think I'm loitering. I have an actual purpose here.
That's good.
And I'm very excited about it.
Right.
But I think that achievement is exciting. The fact that you have this continental relationship, or transatlantic, because they're not on the same continent. They're an island.
Right.
I got my geography down. That's exciting. Yeah. And you're leading the world.
Yeah. We're continually building on our workforce development platform.
Yeah.
Which is really unique to us as a trade association. The others really don't do too much in that arena. Okay.
It's important.
Yeah, it's important. It's a priority for all our companies. So that would be the number one accomplishment. The number two accomplishment, and they're both equally important, just to underscore that. But we created a cyber security council. In our world, cyber is pretty important.
Huge.
Right? Our companies are in charge of protecting the American financial grid.
And every single enterprise, every single business, every single hospital, or this or that crosses over into that grid.
Yeah.
And it's so important. Tell me more about that.
Everyone makes payments.
Yeah.
It's commerce. And protecting that is of critical importance. And recently, it's been deemed just in the last 3 years by the White House as formally critical infrastructure, equal to that of like the utility grid or the transportation grid.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The payments grid in particular. So, cybersecurity is a priority. Our financial grid is under constant attack.
Yep.
By nation states. We all know who they are. They are busy at it 24 hours a day, either trying to disrupt or steal data or manipulate data and so forth. It's probably like one of the number one expense items for all of our companies.
Right.
They spend billions and billions of dollars protecting all of us.
Yeah.
So we felt that it was important to create this cyber council, populate it with CISOs, those are Chief Information Security Officers, populate it with the people doing the job, okay? Making those people who do the job, who understand the ins and outs of everything about it, making them available to members of Congress, Capitol Hill, Washington agencies, okay? Making them available to provide insights. So when legislation is being developed that's going to impact cyber, we have this group assembled that we can go to the White House, we can go to Congress, we can go to the agencies and lay it out for them, why a particular piece of legislation is maybe necessary, or why it's not good, or why it might not work, or why, more importantly, it may have unintended consequences.
And really speak from a position of expertise.
Exactly.
Deep expertise.
Exactly.
And therefore, with the politicians, they cannot be expected to know everything. But they can make the best judgments. And by creating something like that to support our elected officials, you've done the country a great service.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that.
It's true.
And we know that we've, made a difference because we are now, routinely meeting with the White House.
Yeah.
We interact primarily with the Office of the National Cybersecurity Director. Our council works with those teams. Last year, the White House rolled out their the National Cybersecurity Strategic Implementation Plan draft. Our group was invited to provide inputs on the pieces of that national strategy that would impact payments. So we now have the ear of the White House, and our folks are helping to refine, modify, craft, improve the strategic piece of the National Cybersecurity Implementation Plan that impacts payments.
Amazing.
So just that was a big, that's a big accomplishment.
It's huge, and it's ever evolving.
Yes,
yeah,
that's right.
I know. Well, it is. West, we are out of time. I wanted to do some more stuff, but you have such great stories and such fantastic expertise, and you are a hidden gem here in Atlanta, and we're going to use this podcast to make you a rock star. You're a rock star.
All right.
You are to me.
I appreciate that.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for agreeing to be on our Fintech panel for the Atlanta Digital World Summit, which is on October 1st at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We hope to see people there. You can meet the great H. West Richards. sir, thank you for all your hard work. And I know there's more exciting stuff coming down the pike.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay tuned, right?
All right, stay tuned. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm Sarah Smith, Atlanta Digital World Summit Podcast.